This is John Zaninovich. Welcome to Move My Mass. You'll be hearing from great guests talk about balancing life and being fit. Hey, Nicole.
Hi, John.
So glad to have you back on.
Thank you for having me.
I wish, I knew you were doing an Ironman Coeur Lane, and I was looking forward to having you on and talk about how that went and how good of a time or bad of a time it might have been. And, of course, you ended up with the DNF. Did not finish your first one.
Yes.
First
ever.
Do not finish ever.
Ever.
And we'll get into the race a little later.
Mm-hmm.
But first, I just want to talk about the training.
Okay.
Was it what you expected? Would you have done more, done less? How'd it go for you?
So I had a coach, and I really liked her training approach from the get-go. I remember her saying that most people overtrain for these things.
Right.
And we're not going to have you do that. So she was really respectful of the fact that, we had lives outside of triathlon training.
Yeah.
We're not pro athletes.
Right.
I like to pretend I am sometimes, but so I feel like there was good balance with the training. And now that being said, it took a lot of work to fit it into my schedule. But once I got into the routine of that, I felt like there was balance. Early morning swims, early morning rides on the trainer, before work and kids and family. The hardest thing was trying to fit in long weekend rides because they took a lot of time.
Right.
And then the open water swims, because we don't have a lot of options in Bakersfield for open water swimming. We have to drive either up to Delano. I actually took a little field trip to Long Beach one Friday when work was slow. So those are the trickier aspects of training. But in general, I felt like it was very manageable.
Okay. How many hours were you averaging? Once you got, I know it ramps up, but what was your average once you were really doing your build sessions? And
probably 12 to 14. Okay. I mean, that sounds like a lot, actually, when I say that.
It is a lot, except 4 or 5 of it's probably a ride.
Yes. Yeah. So the swims were 2 to 3 swims a week.
Mm-hmm.
The rides were 2 to 3 rides a week. Yeah. Runs were 2 to 3 rides, and runs. And the runs were pretty short in general. They were usually a run off the trainer during midweek, and then maybe a short little run after a long ride on the weekend. We did start getting into longer runs as we were getting closer and closer in those kind of final build phases. But honestly, I felt like it was manageable. And maybe that's just because I got so into the routine of it that it just felt normal. In fact, it kind of feels weird not to be doing that again.
Yeah. So, and this was 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah. And so now that time has passed and the high or low of it is passed, do you still feel like, okay, I can do that again?
Yes. In fact, I am doing it again. Yeah. The Ironman gods smiled upon me, and the Tuesday after Coeur d'Alene, they actually reopened registration for a few select races due to loosening COVID restrictions. So I actually was able to get a spot in the previously sold out Ironman California, which is the inaugural race.
Where's that?
Sacramento.
Nice.
End of October.
When is it? Okay.
October 24th. Yep. So I was pretty set on redemption.
Immediately, right?
Immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as I started to feel better within the next day or two, and could kind of really process it and think about it, I thought, I know I can do this.
Yeah.
I know my training was good. I had a few little hiccups in training, but I know in general it was good. I had the fitness to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So why not just give it another shot?
Yeah.
So I am.
And I know swimming was your least favorite, or your right. And now that you've done it, how was that? Well, let's just get into the race.
Okay.
So, how was the swim?
The swim was amazing. It went better than I could have expected. And I credit that to the training. I mean, I had the swim fitness that I needed.
Yeah.
A lot of it was built in the pool. So I had that fitness, but then I did get enough open water experience that I felt more comfortable.
Yeah.
And for me in the open water, in all my training sessions, I always had a paddleboard with me, somebody on the paddleboard.
Right.
And that really helped with gaining confidence and not having that fear. That was a game changer. I had that paddleboard. I called it my security blanket, my emotional support paddleboard. I had various people that would come with me and do that. So that was a big help. And then just getting in the water the 2 days before the race and swimming on the course a little bit, making friends with the lake, as I called it.
Yeah.
That helped immensely.
It's cold water, right?
Well, typically it is. Typically it's in the lower 60s, but on race day it was about 70.
Oh, wow.
So it was actually perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. It could have been a couple degrees cooler, but it wasn't bad. Didn't feel too hot during the swim. Lake Coeur d'Alene is stunningly beautiful.
It is. And it's a 2-lap swim, right?
It's a 2-lap swim, which is a little bit unusual because on the second lap, when you come around, you actually get out of the water, run up on the beach just a couple of feet and get back in, which, a lot of seasoned triathletes that are really strong swimmers, I think were kind of frustrated and annoyed by that. I actually really liked it because it just gave me a chance to reset. I could wrap my brain around swimming 2,200 yards.
Yeah.
Twice.
Right.
And it was a little easier to just compartmentalize the swim in that way. So I think you just have to find ways to, in these long races, is compartmentalize it rather than think about the whole thing.
You can't, or it'll be overwhelming.
Yeah, it's too overwhelming. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for a 2,200 yard swim. I've done it a billion times in the pool. I've done it in the open water. I can do this. Right. So that was really helpful. And the lake is so clear and clean, and
it's beautiful area.
It's beautiful. Yeah, beautiful.
So you're thinking, all right, the swim's going better than expected.
Well, I didn't realize it was going better than expected until I got out of the water to go into that second lap, and I glanced at my watch and I thought, holy cow.
Yeah.
Whoa, I swam that way faster than I thought I would.
The taper was working.
Yeah, I thought, I was so excited. So starting that second lap, I was just so happy. And so it was awesome.
And then you get on the bike.
Then I got on the bike, which actually started great. So the bike course at Coeur d'Alene, for anybody that has done Coeur d'Alene, they have 70.3s and they've had full Ironman there before. It's really tough.
Right.
On a
lot of climbing.
A lot of climbing. It's about 7,000-ish feet of climbing. So that in and of itself makes it a really challenging course. It does have a section, a short out and back that goes along the lake, which is beautiful and not too hilly, and you get a nice cool breeze in the morning. Yeah. And then it has a really long out and back out on a highway where all the climbs are, and it's totally exposed. There's no shade. Yeah. And you do that short out and back twice. You do the long out and back twice. So it's a really tough course. The first lap around, things were going good. Things started to not go so good at about mile 70-ish, and the temperatures were getting really hot. And that's when I was on some of the hardest climbs of the day. Right. I mean, we're talking long climbs, miles of climbing, 6-7% grade. Yeah. And what's really, I was talking about this to one of my training partners, asking if they experienced the same thing, is my feet were killing me on the bike, which is something I really hadn't experienced. I've worn the same bike shoes for a couple of years. They're in good shape still. And it dawned on me, my feet were burning because the temperatures coming off the pavement were over 130 degrees with that heat rising. Right. And it didn't occur to me till after the race, and I was kind of processing, my feet were literally burning. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's not good. It's terrible when you're trying to climb. So that was tough. But so things were starting to go south at about mile 70. I really just barely made it to the aid station, which is about mile 83. I was starting to become kind of disoriented, swerving a little on the bike, just having a really hard time getting my fluids and my nutrition in because my stomach was really starting to not be happy. So at that point, I think that climb that took so long, my fluid intake went down. Yeah. And by the time I got to the aid station, I was really shaky, having a hard time just balancing on my bike. Right. It's when you know things are going south really bad. Yeah. Yeah. And I really thought, I think when I got into the aid station, I got my bottles filled up. The volunteers were amazing. They basically came up to you and what do you need? What do you need? They're putting ice down my kit. They were getting ice and fluids in my bottles. And I just remember the volunteer that was helping me. She was holding me by my shoulders and steadying me. And she said, kind of just asked, I think she probably had a checklist in her mind of asking questions to make sure athletes are okay. I mean, that's part of their job.
Right.
And she was asking me questions. And I just remember her saying, I don't feel good letting you back on the course. And she's like, you do not look good. And I think at that moment, because I still was of this mindset, like, I just need to get my fluids, I need to get my temperature down, and I'll be okay. But when she said that, and I realized my stomach was still like, not happy, and I realized she was right.
So when you were approaching it, were you still able to take in fluids?
I was, but not a lot. Not a lot.
It's weird because you need them, but you have zero desire to take them in.
Yeah, and there were a couple of things with that, with it being so hot out. All the fluids that I had on my bike were hot, which decreases that drive to drink right there. Right. And then, I did have a water bottle that I was using to try to keep myself wet. Probably wasn't doing that enough in retrospect. Because I was trying to drink as many fluids as I could. But I think when I realized, that what was left on the course to finish the bike course, it's 30 miles short of the end, right? Yeah. It's only 30 miles, but that 30 miles still had like 2 or 3 major climbs and was still on that exposed section of highway.
And still a part of the day where it's still getting warmer.
Oh, no, still getting warmer. Absolutely. Yeah. So, all of those things, when it sort of just crystallized at that moment, and I realized there's no safe way out of this bike segment.
Yeah.
Because there was a big long hill I just come up, I had to go down that. And it was a treacherous enough descent that it was a no passing zone, no aero bar zone. So, and it was on a pretty narrow piece of shoulder. So, it's a little hairy,
right?
And if you're not feeling 100%, those kind of situations, I think, can become really dangerous. So
that starts getting to you mentally.
Yeah.
You have to put that much thought into the ride.
Right. Yeah. And when you're
just, all right, I just have to
just
ride.
Going for it.
You're worrying about crashing.
Yeah.
Things.
And I think if you're not feeling like 100%, you don't have 100% of your faculties with you, and focusing on just riding straight is becoming a challenge. I feel like that's when things are not going well.
Yeah.
And so it was a tough call to make. Like I said, just not ever having a DNF before. But I kind of sometimes think that, had this happened on the run portion, I feel like I would have maybe been able to salvage the day. But when you're on a bike, I feel like it's a different scenario.
Well, especially if you have climbing.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a flat bike, okay, you can also still maybe
you can. It. Yeah. Yeah. But
long day.
Yeah. So I literally got on the struggle bus. They had a bus there, the aid station.
Yeah. Well, it's an Ironman, so it's an Ironman.
Yeah.
And
it was.
you didn't quit an easy race.
No.
But back to the bike. Would you do that ride again on a triathlon bike, or would you use a regular road bike with all the climbing?
Man,
I've asked a few people that, and they always say, I'd still do it on a triathlon bike.
I probably would still do it on a tri bike.
Because I hate climbing.
It's tough because you don't have those extra gears. And the
angles are different.
Yeah. The climbing on a tri bike doesn't bother me. And I like the fact that when you do have a descent, unless it's a descent that's deemed a no aero zone, like this, one of those descents was, I like the fact that you can get your aero bars on the descents, and you can get a little rest.
Cover some ground.
Yeah. And you can increase your speed. So that is a benefit to it. I guess you could do that on a road bike. You can just get real low in your drops, but, I don't know. I'd probably still do it on a tri bike.
Okay.
Less weight to haul up the hill too.
That's true. So struggled, couldn't finish it. Thinking back, anything could have helped you? And you mentioned, maybe keeping yourself wetter with some cold water. Yeah.
There are some things in talking to my training partners that kind of worked for them that I was thinking, I wonder if I would have tried that, if that would have worked. One of my friends had said, she wore a handkerchief around her neck during the bike. So she was able to keep her neck wet and cool with, another aid station. So maybe that's something I could have done. Maybe I could have kept myself wet more during the race and just get that kind of cooling effect. I did have one at one of the first, I think it was the second bike aid station, and I was refilling my Aero bottle. My plan was to refill with Gatorade Endurance, which is what they had on course at that particular aid station.
Mm-hmm.
So I grabbed the bottle, and anybody who's done triathlon knows that you grab it on the move.
Right.
And you quickly refill your Aero bottle, and you can check the bottle before it's, you leave the aid station area. So I grabbed the Gatorade Endurance. I was ready to fill up, and nothing was coming out. And I found out later, I finally just got frustrated and stuck it in. I had an empty bottle cage just to hold extra fluids. The seal on the Gatorade bottle hadn't been peeled off,
right,
which was really frustrating. I should have, in retrospect, just stopped really quick. I would have lost less than a minute to just stop, unclip, and just refill it. But I may have gotten a little bit behind. I still had fluids on me. I had 3 bottles with me. But, those little things, you always wonder, well, did that start to set me back a little bit?
I know. So what was your goal time? Did you have a goal?
Gosh, I feel even silly mentioning this because in that heat, it probably should have been
if there was no heat.
So,
regular temperature. What was, when you were training, I want to do this in what time?
So I thought that it was very realistic and possible to hit 13 and a half hours based on, and that was giving a lot of cushion to every single leg of the race.
Right.
And I still feel like that would be very doable.
Right.
I didn't think it was an overly aggressive goal, just knowing the course and knowing that it was going to be warm. I didn't necessarily think that it was going to be over 100 degrees.
Right. Who would up there? But so it's funny to, and I'm not a fast racer by any means, but I would, like, looking back, you would say, why didn't I just stop and take the, you're not winning the race.
Right.
And what's the difference? Even if you hit your goal, 13 and a half, or what's the difference between 13:30 and 13:32?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But you get into that race mode and you're thinking, I have to go.
Yeah.
I have to go. I have to go. Because you are racing yourself.
Yeah.
But there are things you just wish, looking back, why didn't I take 30 seconds?
Right.
Or even a full minute.
Yeah. That one thing.
Yeah. Probably that kind of heat, that kind of stuff saves borderline heat.
Yeah.
When it's that hot. You said 30% of the field didn't finish.
I've seen
That's
28
huge.
and 30%, which is 2 to 3 times kind of a normal DNF rate for it.
Yeah, I think they're like just under 10.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, kind of 8 to 10% is,
Yeah.
I think, average.
So that says a lot about the heat.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously there's, I think one thing that we have to remember, and I admit I don't always remember this, is that with endurance races and ultra endurance races, running, triathlon, is that you can control the controllables, but you can't, there's always going to be things that you can't control. Weather's going to be one of them. And you can even control how you try to manage the heat on a particular day like that. But even your best efforts, things are going to happen.
Right.
Like physiologically, our bodies are not really meant to perform in that kind of heat.
Part. Right.
I mean, it's just, things are happening, when you have blood flow away from your gut to try to cool your skin, and it makes it hard for nutrition to, to get absorbed. I mean, those kind of things, you can't really fight that.
Right. So you were prepared nutrition. Obviously, that's what you do.
Yeah, actually, I was pretty happy. The nutrition was good. There were some things I maybe would have changed in terms of what I had on the bike. I mean, I took what I trained with, and on that day, they just didn't taste that great. So, I had some gummies that I thought, these are way too sweet. I wish I had brought something else.
Especially on a hot day.
I know.
They're even worse.
Yeah.
Sweet,
and it just wasn't, I wasn't loving eating them. I ate them. I felt like just looking back at what I had consumed calorie wise, I was right on track.
Mm-hmm.
So that was going great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is hard. The heat is something that is really, really hard to manage despite best efforts.
The bummer is now that you've pretty much pushed yourself to heat exhaustion, it happens easier.
Yeah.
To me, it does, because I've done it.
Yes.
And now I really can't handle the heat.
Yes.
Ever since, and it's a bummer because it's always hot.
Yeah.
Around here.
And that is something that, I'm hopeful that, I really don't want to think about, what that's going to mean for future training. I'm hoping that I maybe nipped it in the bud a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely was showing the signs of heat stress and heat exhaustion. I don't know how far, how quickly it would have turned into a worse situation.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know. It can happen so fast, right?
It does. Well, and you're not going to stop until you have to.
Exactly.
So you know it's coming. If I just get to that next water station.
Yeah.
If I just coast a little bit.
Right.
You go through all the scenarios in your head of if I just.
Yeah.
And then, it just gets worse.
It does.
And it gets worse and it gets worse.
And it gets harder to come back from the further you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
So October, you have another chance.
Yes.
First of all, before we talk about that, you are going to hike the John Muir Trail with a couple friends or one friend?
One other friend.
Yeah. And that is happening
happening a week from tomorrow.
A week from tomorrow.
July 17th.
How long will that take?
It will take, our tentative itinerary is 18 days. Okay, so we're actually
close to 3 weeks.
Yeah, close to 3 weeks.
And then you'll get back. And then you're going to get right back on the Ironman horse?
I have, yes. So I've already talked with my coach. We have a plan for about a 6-week build and then kind of a 3-ish week taper. So that gives me 2 to 3 weeks when I get back to just decompress and relax and maybe kind of get slowly back into the routine of run, bike, swim, bike, run.
Right. So I haven't even looked at that course. What's that course like?
It's pancake flat.
Which that's hard too.
I know. I kind of wish there was a little bit of rolling hills, and maybe there are. It just says flat on the description. Yeah. But it is a river swim in the American River, and it is a downriver swim. So that should be a really interesting experience.
Yeah. Whenever I look up triathlon, if I think about doing one, I see a river swim, it just always turns me off.
Oh, really?
I don't want to swim in the river. I don't know. I don't want. Because I would look at my time. I'm like, is that my legit time?
True. It is a huge aid.
Yeah. But I mean, I'd still do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the downriver swim. It's a more or less flat run and flat ride. So it should be
good time of year for good weather.
I am hoping so.
Yeah. But you know what? You trained. I mean, even though Coeur d'Alene was a lot of climbing, and you trained with climbing, but you still trained a lot of flat road.
Oh, yeah. I mean, living here in Bakersfield, there's plenty of flat to train on.
Right.
Yeah.
And you did have, I remember meeting you at the pool, and you talked about you had an injury for a little while. Mm-hmm. Would you do anything different? Well, what was the injury? So
I had... Triathlon has been challenging for me this year. So I had a week before I was supposed to do St. George 70.3 in early May as a dress rehearsal race for Coeur d'Alene. Yeah. And literally the week before St. George, I developed a calf strain. And I was on an easy run with my training partners, could not walk on it, had to get picked up because it was too painful to walk on. So that set me
warning of it coming, or did it just happen on the run?
No. I mean, I usually deal with some tightness in my calves, which I'm pretty good about rolling and stretching and all of that. But it just literally came on, started as a little tightness, like, oh, I'm feeling a little niggle on my calf. Let me stop and stretch it. Oh, I'm going to keep running. And just bam, it hit me. So, so that calf strain set me back. I couldn't run on it for about 5-ish, 6 weeks, but I was still biking and swimming. Yeah. So I wasn't really too worried about that setting me back. I think the only thing is not getting some longer runs in the heat. Maybe I feel like might have benefited me, but I was still riding. I was still swimming. I was doing PT. I was getting a lot of work on it. And actually come race day. What was the core issue that caused it? Not sure. My doctor's not really sure. He said it could have been overuse. It could have just been a fluky thing. I still don't really know. It was kind of a surprise. It literally came out of nowhere. Yeah. So I was still able to train by the time we were tapering down for Coeur d'Alene. And I was actually starting to ramp up my running a little bit because I hadn't really done a whole lot. I felt good about it because I had a plan that in the race I was going to walk the marathon anyway. Mm-hmm. And so that actually worked beautifully, having come off an injury while training. So, and it was fine. My calf was feeling great and it's fine. So what made you mentioned, I remember you mentioned that you were going to walk it. Mm-hmm. What made you decide to go with that strategy? Because it seems like people think about it. Yeah. I walk it because I have to walk it. I don't go into it saying I'm going to walk this thing because as a strategy. Right. I can't run a marathon. Why?
can run a marathon by itself.
Sure.
Can't do it at the end of an Ironman. Yeah. And so I just know I'm going to walk parts of it.
Right. Well, so I talked about it with my coach, and we, I really had lofty goals for the marathon, just being a runner primarily, that I really, I thought that this was going to be my time to shine. Right.
Right.
And she did kind of talk me down a little bit and say, hey, remember, this is the end of the Ironman. Let's set a goal, especially coming off this calf injury. Let's set a goal to walk it. And she's like, do that. And if the last 10K, you feel amazing and fresh, run the last 10K.
Right.
So that's kind of the approach that we took. She really kind of talked me into it. And I felt good about it because that was working when I was returning back to running in my training. The run walk was working. And I thought, I feel good that I'm not going to re-injure or aggravate my calf. Right. And I thought it made sense. It made sense to do the run walk. And it was a 4-1. So 4-minute run, 1-minute walk.
Yeah.
So not a lot of walking. No. But enough to just break it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe keep the legs feeling fresh so that in that last 10K-ish, then you can just tear the Band-Aid off and go for it.
Right. and I've heard, like if you go with the strategy of run, walk, to stick with it.
Yeah.
And you will put in a faster time.
Exactly.
Than running until you're tired.
Yes.
And walking.
Yes.
That's what I do.
And that was one thing my coach really emphasized. Is she said, if this is what you're going to do, you need to do it from mile 0.
Right.
Do not wait until you're so fatigued, because then you will have slowed way down. And yes, exactly like you said, you'll be able to put in faster times. And I even saw that in my training. Like one of my last long runs that I did a 10 miler, and I did it at just over a 9-minute pace with a run walk.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, hey, this would be amazing if I did this pace at the end of an Ironman.
Heck yeah.
I mean, that would be awesome. And so I was a convert. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to try to qualify for Boston at the end of an Ironman. It's just all about preservation at that point. So if the run walk is a strategy that works, go for it. And I love the 4-1 because it's a lot easier, when your brain is going south at the end of a race and you can't do math in your head. 4-1 is easy. Every 5 minutes you get a 1-minute walk break, or in every 5-minute block.
You're going to get a minute.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
And then that 10 minutes going to go by fast.
It always goes by fast.
Yeah.
And it goes by faster and faster.
Yeah. So back to the swim. Are they doing wave starts in Coeur d'Alene? Is that what they did? Or was it a mass start?
It was a wave start. And I love the start. So they sent the pros off.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started with the age groupers at about 5:35. It took a long time to get everybody in the water because they were starting 3 people. No, is it 3 people? 3 people every 5 seconds.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Which actually was really nice.
That is nice.
Because
it takes away my favorite part of the swim.
The elbowing and the fighting for position.
The front part. Yeah, that's the fun part. But at least it's nice for all right, have open water.
It was a very relaxed entrance into the water. And even when the buzzer went and we, went into the water, it wasn't this sprint for positioning. We just waded in because I lined up with 2 of my training partners that were planning to swim about the same pace. And the 3 of us lined up together, which was great.
So you could randomly line up.
Yeah, they had a self-seating. So we lined up based on our anticipated finish time.
Gotcha.
And then from there, they were kind of queuing you up on the beach to go 3 people every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So we just waded into the water, took a couple breaststrokes, and then started swimming.
Yeah.
It was super relaxed.
Are you the navigator, or did you rely on somebody else?
Well, once we were all in the water, we all kind of went other ways. We spread out quite a bit. And I did. No, I think we were. I was just trying to navigate myself. Which navigating the open water is always
something you have to learn how to do.
Yeah, it's a learning curve. But
I totally gamble. I pick somebody that's just my pace.
Just hang on.
I get on their hill and I'm like, I hope you're swimming straight. I mean, of course I check.
I tried a little bit of that.
I will hang on there for a long time before I check.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, he or she, they're still swimming straight. So I'm going to stay like this.
I usually try to sight. One thing I do in open water swimming, which just helps me to stay relaxed, is I count my strokes, and I'm just counting the whole time.
Yeah.
My mind is wandering and other thoughts, but I'm counting my strokes, and usually every 6 strokes I sight, 6 to 10, just depending. And so that's just what I did in the race.
Right.
it got a little tricky because it is a long rectangle course, and it heads out and you make the left turn, and we were looking right in the sun. And
that's hard.
That was a really tricky part of the course because nobody could see.
Yeah.
Everybody was blinded by the reflection coming off the water and then the sun actually in your eyes. So that was actually the only point in the race where there was a lot of body contact, because you come around a turn, everybody tightens up, nobody can see where they're going, everybody's swimming all different directions. So I guess we got a little bit of that.
Right. What's your goal time for Sacramento?
Gosh, I even hesitate to say. At least as fast as 13:30, maybe faster. Right. I'd love to go under 13. I'd love to say I'm going to go under 12, but gosh, I don't know.
Just go finish it, right?
I'm good. Yeah, well, that should be goal one, goal A. The A goal is to finish. B goal, maybe a 13:30. How about let's go crazy and say a sub 13? Maybe I'll surprise myself.
There you go.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I was looking forward to this. I was hoping that it would have been
a different conversation.
But I think that, listeners probably might have gotten more out of this, because it's always tough to talk about the hard races once they didn't go well, but they're such a good learning experience.
They are. And I think one thing that I came away with is that it's not really, I always thought of a DNF as a failure. I failed to finish. But I think what I'm realizing is that it like you said, it is a learning experience. I mean, hey, I did over half of it.
Well, and those are, and it's only in your head because you know what the conditions were.
Right.
And of course, so you're always hard on yourself, even though you know what they were, but like, I still didn't finish.
Right.
It's like, come on, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's almost not like a DNF even. It's almost actually, why did I even start the damn thing?
Well, there is some of that too. Yeah, but it isn't, somebody had said to me that, DNF really should stand for did not fail, because, you still put in the training, you still showed up and started, and there still was some learning that came out of it, of the whole experience. So I guess looking at it in that regard, it's not a failure.
Right. No, it totally isn't. And I'm sure you'll succeed in Sacramento.
I plan to.
And looking forward to hearing about those results. But thank you so much for coming back on.
Thanks for having me.